2020 is finally over. This whole year's been such a massive train wreck, but you know what? Going into the new year, 2021, I'm pretty optimistic, honestly. So tell me, is America still on fire? You know what? Indoors is fun. Indoors is perfectly fine. Indoors never hurt anyone. Except old people, I guess. Guess I better find some way to distract myself from the ever-increasing dumpster fire that I share a country with. Luckily, I have a way to combine two of my favorite forms of escapism. Video games and theme parks. I love theme parks. My family doesn't travel all that much, but because we live in the Southwest, we occasionally travel to Knott's Berry Farm, Magic Mountain, Universal Studios, and, of course, Disneyland. They're a great way to escape reality, enjoy some intricate theming, go on awesome rides, and meet better YouTubers than me. It makes you just want to take a crack at building your own, and luckily, there's a way. RollerCoaster Tycoon is a series of simulation games all about building and managing your very own theme park. The first game was released for computers in 1999, and since then has gone to define the simulation genre. You know all those Tycoon games you pass by on the rack at the video game section at Walmart? You have this game to thank for the overabundance of Tycoon games. It was created by Scottish programmer Chris Sawyer, who had originally found success with the Transport Tycoon series years prior and became interested in roller coasters, deciding to use this interest to craft a successor, a classic, beloved game which he called White Knuckle. But then he renamed it to RollerCoaster Tycoon and immediately proceeded to strike it rich. Now, RollerCoaster Tycoon as a series is really important to me. The second game in particular is one of my most cherished childhood titles, and I got interested in looking at the series again a few years back when the first two games were compiled together for mobile devices, so I decided to take a look back at where the series started, where it ended up, and why it really should have just quit while it was ahead. So strap yourselves in, because we're about to go coasting through the ages and embark on a retrospective of the RollerCoaster Tycoon series. Por favor, scream if you want more. As I said before, it was released in 1999, but I should clarify, RCT was not the first theme park simulation game, since Theme Park predates it by about 5 years. Nor was it the first game to bear the Tycoon name, as it was preceded by Railroad Tycoon, as well as Sawyer's own Transport Tycoon. But it still defined the genre for years to come, since Theme Park may have laid the foundation for this genre, but there's a reason why all future games of the sort get compared to RollerCoaster Tycoon. This game is the gold standard for not just the theme park builder genre, but for all other Tycoon games. Zoo Tycoon, Mall Tycoon, Game Dev Tycoon, Prison Tycoon, Cult Tycoon, they all have this masterpiece to answer to. Now let's start with the basics. Your goal, as should be pretty obvious, is to build and maintain a theme park and make it profitable. You have all sorts of rides and attractions to choose from, which are generally divided into two categories: flat rides and tracked rides, which include roller coasters. I guess there are also water rides, but those are kinda useless. For the most part, the flat rides are what help you maintain your bottom line. You got your merry-go-rounds, your Ferris wheels, your haunted houses, your droppy things, your spinny things, what have you. These are the ones that you can just drop anywhere, and the merry-go-round in particular is a great addition because the classical organ music is just so pleasant to listen to as you go about building your park. Since we're here, this game has some really solid sound design. Just listen. Maybe it's just nostalgia talking, but the sounds of building things in this game have this really satisfying weight to them. But if flat rides are the bread and butter of your park, then roller coasters are the meat. They're expensive to build, getting into the tens of thousands of dollars, or euros, I guess. But if you know what you're doing, they pay for themselves almost instantly. Coasters are where a bulk of the customization comes from, and you have free reign to build your coasters however you like. And I can't be the only one who just sit back and watch these coasters go after I finish them. They're just so pleasant to look at. Am I the only one? No? Okay. Your rides all get scored in 3 areas. Excitement is how fun the coasters are, intensity is how scary they are and how extreme the G-forces are, and nausea is how likely guests are to throw up when they get off. Ideally, you want a high excitement, low nausea, and an intensity that's somewhere in between. But they can't just be pretty to look at. They have to actually work if you want to have any chance at succeeding. Otherwise, this'll happen. If a ride crashes, then no one's going to ride it even after you fix it because it's unsafe, which, I mean, fair enough. Except for the fact that the ride clearly crashed while it was during testing when it's supposed to be okay to make these kinds of mistakes, and I rebuilt the ride from scratch so it would work properly, and Now this can be a nasty shock if it happens on accident, but it's actually become something of a rite of passage to kill your guests on purpose. Oh, what's that, guest 785? You want to go home? Alright, I'll let you go home. To God! You have a ton of different varieties of coasters to choose from, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Wooden coasters are relatively cheap and have high excitement. Junior coasters can't go high, but their curved lift hills are great for compact rides, plus it's a great way to appease the cowards who can't stomach the real rides. The looping steel coaster is just a solid all-around coaster that's good in any situation, and so on and so forth. You also need to place shops to keep your cash flow going and milk those sad, miserable peons for every cent. I mean, keep your guests happy. Yeah. That's it. Nothing else. Ah, the 90s, back when you could buy a park bench for $5 and a burger only cost $2. Nowadays, I gotta take out an entire mortgage just for one of those Disney turkey legs, but you know what? They're totally worth it. Those things are frickin' good. You also need to hire staff to keep your park going, and to that end, you'll need to hire mechanics to fix broken rides, handymen to clean up trash and keep your flowers watered, security guards to stop vandals, and entertainers to do basically nothing as far as I can tell. But what exactly is your goal apart from not going bankrupt? Well, the game is divided into scenarios, each with their own layouts, available rides, and objectives. These objectives range from having a certain number of guests in your park, to having a certain number of coasters in your park, to achieving a certain park value, that sort of thing. They start off depressingly simple, but as you go along they get more challenging really quick. Most of them are really well designed, and you unlock more as you complete the game. Let's go over a few of my favorites, shall we? My favorite scenario of RollerCoaster Tycoon is Ivory Towers. Here you have a pre-built park where everything's been vandalized, there's garbage and vomit on literally every square foot, and the big roller coaster at the center of it all is really poorly designed with a nausea score that's off the charts. The game just hands you this dumpster fire of a park and says, good luck. As for some of the other ones, Leafy Lake is an early scenario that gives you a butt-ton of land, a butt-ton of money, and a wonderful location that gets you used to the idea of building on water. From the expansions, we got Haunted Harbor and Utopia Park, which are the same sort of deal. You start off with a pitifully small amount of land, but you can buy the surrounding land to expand as you gain a steadier cash flow. Buying land is actually a mechanic in this game that rarely gets used, so I enjoy that these two parks are specifically built around it. Magic Quarters is a pretty basic park divided into 4 corners with their own themes, and it feels like a real existable theme park in the way that's set up, so as a result, it's really fun to build on. There's Coaster Canyon, which gives you a really narrow crevice that you need to find a way to fit loads of rides into. Whispering Cliffs is a similar deal, as is Butterfly Dam to a lesser extent, which has you building rides on 2 completely different planes with this dam in between them. Thunderstorm Park constantly rains with thunderstorms, as the name implies, so you have to build all your rides inside this dome here. A Thunderdome, if you will. A lot of these parks are memorable, tightly designed, and really fun to develop. But like I said earlier, some of these scenarios can get brutally difficult at times, especially the ones that give you limitations, like the ones where you can't build above tree height. That isn't a bad thing at all, though. The game is very smart about how it cranks up the difficulty. The challenge curve is actually pretty smooth for the most part. Your reward for toughing it out is Mega Park, a vast, wide-open landscape that provides you with every ride in the game and doesn't have an objective, simply telling you to have fun. Outside of progression, you'll find out that one of the most fun and most profitable things to do is to screw with your customers. Of course you can do the classic charge people to use the bathroom, but there's so much more you can do. What's that? You think Sharknado is really good value? Then you won't mind if I raise the price, now will you? Oh, it's raining, you say? Well, I'll just go ahead and jack up the price on umbrellas, since, fun fact, guests in this game will pay anything for umbrellas when it's raining. You're thirsty? Well, there's plenty of water in that lake there. Is that enough water for you? Oh. Since we're here, I have some serious questions regarding these park guests. What exactly is the age group that I'm catering to, anyway? These guys are perfectly willing to ride the insane, intense coasters that I build, but on the other hand, they also seem perfectly content to ride the kiddie playground rides I threw in there to fill space. I can only assume that these parks are being constructed in a blank, timeless void where age is but a construct of human perception. All of its inhabitants are without beginning or without end, never aging, never maturing, always in their physical prime, yet willing to shell out for whatever petty amusements I put in front of them. Either that or they're all Gen Zers. That's also a distinct possibility. That being said, if you want to have any hope at making a good, profitable park, you need to cater to your guests' needs. The quickest way to know what needs to be fixed is to invade their personal thoughts. Just like Walt Disney. And by tracking their thoughts, you get such helpful and insightful commentary as, "I'm not thirsty." What I also like about this game is that, despite the fact that every scenario is unique and different, you can usually have a pretty consistent strategy that carries you through most of them. So, just for the heck of it, here's the strategy that I went with for most of these. Set research to maximum and research shops and stalls until you unlock the information kiosk, so you can give out park maps to stop people from getting lost and sell ridiculously overpriced umbrellas. That done, switch your focus to researching thrill rides and wait until you unlock the go-karts, building coasters out of the 3 or so coaster types you have unlocked at the start in the meantime. The go-karts are a massive crowd pleaser, so it always helps to have 1 or 2. Seriously, they're kinda broken. Once you get the go-karts, you split your research between thrill rides, gentle rides, roller coasters, and then stalls once you got a good assortment of rides unlocked. Feel free to ignore transportation and scenery, though. Transportation is great and all, but the guest AI never uses it for its intended purpose, and scenery is really downplayed in the first game. In the second game, it's a different story, but for now, it's mostly pretty unimpressive. What you do want to dump your money into is advertisements, because holy crap, these things are broken. Just dump $700 into advertising and you'll see way more guest traffic, meaning you'll make your money back immediately and then some. It's telling that the hardest scenarios in the game are the ones that expressly forbid advertising. Like Pickle Park, for example. Like, what's so special about Pickle Park that I can't advertise for it? Like, what even is a Pickle Park anyway? I'm genuinely curious. Here we go. A Pickle Park is CB slang for a truck stop known for its working girls. I suddenly understand why they don't want to be advertised. Now, I do have some issues with the game, but if I'm being honest, they're only problems because the second game improved on almost every mechanic in the first game. Minor issues like the handyman insisting on uselessly mowing lawns, the fact that track rides need to have ginormous loading platforms to make them viable, and the inability to raise things above ground level are only really awkward if you played the later games first. Like I did. So yeah, the game's got nitpicks. What game doesn't really? But does RollerCoaster Tycoon even have any real glaring problems? Well, the guests are brain-dead morons. I mean it. As fun as it is to screw with them and bleed their wallets dry, these are some of the most oblivious, picky, idiotic wastes of human skin I have ever seen. If your park is more complex than a straight line, they get completely lost and need to be rescued. Literally none of them know how to swim. They complain that they're thirsty, but walk right past a drink stand because they're too busy holding a burger. They never want to ride anything that looks too scary for them, but they'll gladly pile into rides that make them puke their guts out onto the sidewalk. And who gets sick from a kiddie coaster anyway? One thing you never want to do is make wide paths, because they somehow manage to get lost on those. I'm pretty sure that Evergreen Gardens only exists to teach the players how to work around the terrible AI pathfinding. Another problem I have is how much of the game revolves around waiting. Yeah, I know, it's a simulation game, but here's what I mean. In Whispering Cliffs, you need to have a park value of $17,000 by the end of Year 3. Well, guess what? I hit that milestone about 2/3 of the way through Year 1, so a good chunk of that scenario was spent by just staring blankly at the screen waiting for things to happen. This tends to happen a lot. Whether you're waiting for enough money to come in so you can build a new coaster, or waiting for your research to finish, or just waiting for guests to roll in once you got everything set up so you can hit your quota. There's just a lot of waiting. Made even worse by the fact that the game doesn't have a fast forward button, which I can sort of forgive because the genre was still in its infancy, but it still makes some scenarios way more frustrating than they have to be. There is one more kinda sorta problem that's more of just a preference thing. Now, you might want to get the game purely to build your own dream park, but that won't exactly work. Chris Sawyer has gone on record saying that the scenarios are the entire point of the game, and as such there's no real defined sandbox mode. There is Mega Park, but you have to clear all of the vanilla scenarios to get to it. I personally don't mind because the scenarios are just so well designed, but I get that it might not be for everyone. But there's one other aspect of the game that I want to bring up. The fact that it may very well be one of the most well-optimized games of all time. I know that sounds really weird, but hear me out. Computers think differently than we humans do, so when you program something using a game engine, most of the computer's processing power is devoted to decoding it into terms the system can understand. RollerCoaster Tycoon, meanwhile, was programmed in assembly, a programming language that's really close to the actual language computers think in, meaning it uses very little processing power to run at full capacity. As a result, it must have been an absolute nightmare to program, but it runs at near peak performance no matter how terrible or outdated or whatever your computer is. Heck, you could probably run it on a toaster if you attach the screen to it. Freaking kudos to Chris Sawyer and everyone else who worked on the game for going above and beyond the Call of Duty. Does it have its flaws? Of course it does. The gameplay isn't truly refined compared to the sequel, the guest AI is terrible, and a lot of the game revolves waiting. But that hardly matters because the customization options are so ridiculously varied, the scenarios are memorable and well designed, the coaster building is fun, the coaster running is fun, the game runs smooth as butter no matter what you play it on, and even a lot of the issues can mostly be circumvented just by being good at the game. Even though the original release isn't the best way to play it, more on that in a later video, RollerCoaster Tycoon is a classic and deserves to be regarded as such. My final verdict? RollerCoaster Tycoon is excellent. 9 out of 10. And that about wraps it up for the first game. Join me next month as I talk about the game's direct follow-ups and talk about how the RollerCoaster Tycoon series went a couple steps forward and just as many steps back. See you then!